we begin in Lebanon, where the Iran-backed group Hezbollah and its allies have lost their majority in parliament following elections on Sunday. That was the first vote since the country's economic collapse and the first since the devastating Beirut port explosion of 2020. We're here to talk us through the results. Our senior international affairs correspondent, Owen Alterman. And Owen, first of all, can you talk us through the kind of complicated results that we do have so far?
Right, Lebanon's system, famously complicated, Laura, designed to balance all the different sects against each other, does not always, shall we say, do a perfect job of it. But at any rate, what seems clear is that the Hezbollah Eilon bloc has lost its majority, right? 71 seats out of 128 in parliament that it won in 2018, 62 estimated to have won in this set of elections, so obviously putting it below the threshold. The question is, what does it ultimately mean for the country? One thing it might mean is that, again, there will be political paralysis in Lebanon, Laura, because no single bloc can get a majority, something that the Lebanese parliament may have in common with its southern neighbor, as we've seen in Israel's own political stalemate over the course of the past few years. But of course, the major question in Lebanon is, where is change going to come from? You know, on a broadcast that we had on the day of the election, I read a paragraph from a World Bank press release, not from some Facebook user or from an op-ed in a newspaper, a World Bank press release that used words like great denial, deliberate depression. That's how the World Bank describes Lebanon's economic situation. The currency, Laura, has lost 95% of its value, 80% of the population in poverty. World Bank classes it as possibly the third biggest economic collapse since the 1850s. Something has got to give. The political system, simply, it stands to reason, can't continue in the long term or even the medium term the way it is. It didn't fundamentally change in this set of elections. Yes, there's a different result, and power to some degree shifted from one bloc to another, but it wasn't the kind of deep change that one would expect to see given numbers such as those. And it's true that the reformists won some more seats than they've won in the past, but at the same time, one expects there's going to be much more fundamental change across Israel's northern border. It didn't come in this election. It didn't come yesterday. Today, it won't come tomorrow. But at some point, it seems as if that shoe is going to drop.
Yes, and there was certainly a great deal of desperation going into this election. Just 41% turnout, which is low for Lebanon. Lebanon does tend to have a much more active electorate. But before the election, a lot of analysts were saying that actually Hezbollah might profit from that and do well. Is this a major blow for them? Do you think they saw this coming?
I think it's a moderate blow. Obviously, politicians like to win elections and not lose them. But for Hezbollah, part of its political power is the hold that it has in parliament and the representation it has there. But obviously, a bigger part of its power is its weapons, which we in Israel understand well, its backing from Iran, and its core support within its constituency of Shia Muslims, and that's obviously very, very important. Again, I think coming back to the point I was at a moment ago, the bigger question is, when is there going to be some kind of revolution or uprising in Lebanon against the system, right? It didn't come through this election, but when your currency loses 95% of its value, when 80% of your people are in poverty, when bank deposits are wiped out, when hundreds of thousands of people are leaving the country and there's a massive brain drain, the system simply, it stands to reason, can't continue moving on as normal. Maybe it can in the short term, but what does it mean in the medium and long term? And when is there going to be some kind of more fundamental and more basic kind of change in Lebanon? As often with revolutions, you can't say when, but the conditions, at least for the outside, the observer, for the casual observer sitting here from Lebanon's neighbor, the question, it just stands to reason that something has to give and something is going to happen with potentially huge ramifications, of course, not just for Lebanon, for the wider region, something that I think in the day-to-day here in Laura doesn't get enough attention here in Israel.
Absolutely, Owen, thank you very much indeed, Owen Alterman there. Well, for more, I'm joined now by Amjad Taha, strategic political affairs expert and regional head of the British Centre for Middle East Studies and Research. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Amjad, so first of all, what do you think will be the reaction in the Gulf Arab states to those results we were just talking about in Lebanon? We're having a little bit of a sound problem there with Amjad. So Owen is still with us. Owen, if we could talk a bit more about the regional implications of this. Owen, I'm going to let you go. Amjad is back. Amjad, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful. I can hear you as well. So I was just asking you about the reaction in the Gulf Arab states to those results in Lebanon.
Well, everyone in the Gulf welcomes the voices of Lebanese people, and if this results in a decrease in the power of Hezbollah, the international community will celebrate such a success. Whoever is going to lead Lebanon should be heavily focused on Lebanon growth, independent of any negative foreign influence.
Would you say that this is perhaps a sign that Lebanon is falling out of Iran's orbit? And do you think Saudi Arabia might reassert its influence there? Saudi Arabia took a step back from Lebanon over the past 2 years.
It's definitely a sign that the Lebanese desire change in every aspect of their daily lives and demand the transformation of their political system, I believe. Countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia, as you mentioned, have always supported Lebanon. But when it comes to Iran, Iran's support for Hezbollah has contributed into instability in Lebanon.
Well, we did see Saudi Arabia take quite strong steps, though, and impose a trade boycott on Lebanon. Do you think that the relations might be a bit smoother now?
It shall be, especially the fact that these people are being chosen by the Lebanese people, and people of Lebanon have chosen to not give their voices to Hezbollah or any radical groups that divert them away from the peace and prosperity and diversity in the Middle East.
So we see change is coming slowly. Now, Lebanon, of course, is also in mourning right now for the late president of the UAE, Sheikh Khalifa. Lebanese leaders this week described him as a great friend and ally to their country. What is the new president's, MBZ's relationship to Lebanon?
Look, when it comes to MBZ, we'll always support the people and the development of Lebanon. As a result of MBZ's strategical leadership, think tanks view the UAE as a Sparta and the Athena of the region, a hub for conflict resolution. This is when it comes to Lebanon also. This is why we believe that he will strengthen the GCC, he will strengthen the GCC and spread the peace throughout the Middle East and the North Africa, from Lebanon. We're talking to Yemen, to Libya, to Somalia, and so on. Because due to MBZ's leadership, more countries will join the Abrahamic Accord, I believe.